Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of your Mental Performance Mastery. I'm Coach David. Hope you're doing great on today. Hope everything is moving in the right direction for you and that life is giving you everything that you desire. After all, you're the architect of your life, which means you get to decide exactly how your life is going to be because you get to design it. So design on purpose. You get to build it. Take your time and build it correctly, and then you're going to live a great life, the life that you desire. Well, I'm happy that you're here with me on today, and we're going to go on and continue to talk about those, once again, mental traps. And, we're kind of in the middle of one right now that has several pieces to it. So we've been talking about I am the problem. And what we said we wanted to do, we wanted to take you from I am the problem to I am the solution. On last week, we began to talk about that. Now, I said last week that this is the number one mental trap that most people try to get around. Most people try to avoid it because what most people want to do, they would rather blame circumstances, situations, and events rather than take, and say, hey, look, it's me. And so what we began to do on last week, we began to look at that because really life comes down to the choices, decisions, reactions, mindset, and the attitude that you have. That's where life comes. But what people want to do, they want to blame the teacher. They want to blame the coach. They want to blame their boss. They want to blame their race. They want to blame every other situation except for accepting responsibility. Last week, I shared with you that if you really look at it, all the external things, while they do have a play on it, but most definitely it's the internal that is the key. So last week we talked about it's not me. And so we came up and we said, hey, we're blaming other people. This week, we're going to go a little bit further into this. We're going to ask ourselves a question. Maybe it is me. In other words, I'm going to become aware of my role in this situation, my role in the problem, my role in the circumstance or the event or whatever I see myself faced with. I'm going to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about it from the standpoint of how people resist the responsibility. They say, well, maybe it is me, but they're still resisting the responsibility. Last week, I shared with you that responsibility means that you have the ability to respond. You can respond to a situation. You can respond to what's going on. Now, I want to congratulate you if you made it to the point where you can say, maybe it is me, because most people never get there. They spend their entire lives blaming things on the outside of them, those things I've talked about. And, at some point or another, you got to get to it where you got to be honest enough with yourself to look at yourself and say, you know what? Maybe it is me. Just maybe I am the situation here. Maybe it's not the coach. Maybe it's not my boss. Maybe it's not the teacher. Maybe it's not the parents. Maybe the real reason is me. And when I start dealing with that, I'm telling you, you're going to begin to see things start shift. But here's what you can't do. You can't say, maybe it is me, and stop there. You have to continue to move forward and to take on the responsibility, the ability to respond. You got to go a little bit further. But let's just deal with maybe it is me on today, and let's see where we go with that. Now, let me ask you a question as I jump into this. Have you ever heard the saying, success leaves clues? Yeah, I heard somebody say that one time, and I was like, wow, that's really powerful. Success leaves clues. In other words, when a person is successful, there are certain clues that you can see that can help you. Well, I got news for you, though. Failure does the exact same thing. Failure leaves clues, too. So what you got to do, you got to begin to look at this and say the other side of this too is like, if I see failure, there's some clues that I can pick up on that I can begin to work with and to begin to get out of my life in order that I don't fail at something. So failure leaves clues, but also success leaves clues as well. Now, today, I want to look at the common denominator. Yeah, I pause for that. I just want you to think about that for a minute. I want to look at the common denominator, and I want to set this up by giving you an example. So let's say, for instance, and I'm going to talk about me because nobody can get mad when I talk about me. Let's say, for instance, I go to a certain job. And on that job, I find a problem with the boss on that job. He doesn't act right. He doesn't talk right. He doesn't behave right. He doesn't this. He doesn't that. So you know what? I don't have to put up with that. I don't have to tolerate that. I can do better than that. So I leave that job and go to another job. But you know what? I get to that job and I find the exact same problem with the boss. She doesn't act right. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do that. She does. So you know what? I don't have to put up with that. I'm going to another job. I can leave and I have options. I'm going to another job. Would you believe I get to that third job and I find the exact same situation with that boss too? We're talking about the common denominator here. Now I went from one boss to the next boss to the next boss. And so, but I'm finding the same problem. That's what I call the common denominator factor. And when you are honest enough with yourself and you sit down and you can look at this and you can be like, well, wait a minute. Every boss cannot have the same problem. They just can't. I'll say it like this for my athletes. Every coach can't have the same problem. I'm going to say it like this for my students. Every teacher cannot have the same problem. You have to look at what the common denominator is. The common denominator is usually the person that's staring back at you when you look at them, or situational solution will tell you that there is not something wrong with every boss. There's not something wrong with every teacher. There's not something wrong with every coach. I got to look at me and say, it's the enemy in me. I am the common denominator. Now, when you come to that point, here's my first point. It's going to be powerful. Self-awareness can hurt. Oh, yeah, it can be uncomfortable. When you finally come, excuse me, when you finally come to the stage where you look at this and you say, wow, I am the common denominator. The truth will often hurt you before it heals you. However, I want to caution you with this. The truth is what you need to hear. Why? Because denial, when you live in denial and you say, oh, no, that's not me, it delays your improvement. You cannot improve if you're constantly in this point of denial. What you avoid today, hear me out on this, what you avoid today becomes the obstacle that you face on tomorrow. And no matter what you do, you're going to face that obstacle. I like to paint this picture for you. You are given tests. And when you don't pass the test, you have to go back and retest. And I promise you that if there is something in your life that you have not dealt with, you're going to keep bumping up against that. You're going to keep coming into that. You're going to be tested over and over and over again. So I want to encourage you on today. You got to face the truth. And I said the truth will hurt at times. It will sting at times, but you have to face the truth. When you face the truth, now, watch this right here. You could get a breakthrough, but a breakthrough requires the strength to have what I call an honest conversation with yourself. You're going to have to look inward before you start looking at all of these things on the outside. It's not your parents. It's not your teacher. It's not your coach. The common denominator, and this is what you got to deal with, is you. And that can be painful. I know that. But listen, once you can grab a hold to this and say, you know what? It may just be me. Maybe it's me. When you start doing that, now your breakthroughs start coming. Now you start seeing everything. But the starting point, listen to me, the starting point of all recovery and all growth is this right here, when you can accept the truth. The truth does hurt. I cannot emphasize that enough. This is why people avoid it, because, you know, for me to look in the mirror and say, boy, this really is me. I'm screwed up. I've messed up. When I get to that point right there, that hurts. But this is what I know. The truth hurts, but it changes my life. I start to get better. See, we've got this thing in our world today where when you start taking accountability and you say accountability is my responsibility, and I talked about that last week, about responsibility is your ability to respond. Accountability means this right here. It means accepting responsibility for my actions, for my choices, for my results, and then I'm going to do something about it. I'll say it again. Responsibility, meaning that I have the ability to respond, is twofold. Number one, I've got to accept that it was my actions, it was my choices, it was my results, but then I got to look at this and say, I can't just stop there. I have to do something about it. See, here's where we're at also in our world today. When people start talking about who is responsible, this is what happens. Immediately, people start looking at, oh, who's to blame? They want to find who they got to blame. So what has happened, responsibility, the ability to respond, has gotten a bad rap these days. It's getting a bad reputation. It's not a matter of saying that who's to blame. It's a matter of gaining control. When I say I have the ability to respond, I get control. And when I get control, I get my power back. Remember last week, I shared with you, do not give your power away, accept the responsibility. Why? Because responsibility gives you options. Responsibility means this right here. I have the ability to respond to this. So I take my power back, and now I go into control on how I respond. Listen to this. I understand that things are going to happen to you. I understand that things are going to happen around you. I understand that people are going to do things to you, say things about you. I get that. It happens all the time. But hear me, you may not have the power over all of those things. But the one thing I know for sure that you have the power over, you have the power to control how you respond. And how you respond is your responsibility. What do you mean? I have the ability to respond in the correct way. Responsibility is my power. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to paint a great example for you. You have two students. They both take the same test on the same day at the same time. One student looks at it and another student looks at it, but they both failed the test. Now, one student's going to go about and they're going to complain about how unfair the teacher was. They're going to complain about how the test was slanted in a certain direction. They're going to talk about how the teacher didn't properly prepare them. The other student who failed also is going to now take responsibility for this. They're going to say, did I study enough? Did I have the right notes? Can I go get assistance from the teacher? Two students, exact same situation, but how they respond is differently. Let me ask you a question. When they retake that test, who do you think is going to come out better? The student who refused to accept responsibility, or the students who said, I am responsible. I have the ability to respond. They both have that ability, but how did they use it? The moment you accept responsibility, you regain your influence. Oh, yeah. Now you can start influencing this thing in a certain way. That's true leadership. Leadership is the ability to influence. You can, first place you got to have some influence is your own life. You cannot influence others if you can't influence yourself. Here's the next part to it. The moment you accept responsibility, you have options. I'm not going to go into that again. Go back and listen to last week. I told you about the options. And number three, the moment you accept responsibility, you can now begin to improve. The moment you accept responsibility, you stop waiting to be rescued and you rescue yourself. So I am going to challenge you on this week that you will take this lesson and you'll be like, you know what? Maybe I am the problem. And so what do I need to do now? I need to become self-aware. Oh, that stings. That hurts. It's a little uncomfortable, but that's okay because the truth does hurt, but it impacts and changes my life. And now I've got to become responsible. What does that mean? I have the ability to respond, and I am going to do it. I'm not waiting for anybody to rescue me. I'm not waiting for anybody to make my life better. I am going to do that myself because I am responsible for my life. I have the ability to respond to every situation and every circumstance and take control of this thing. So this is what I want you to do this week. And actually, you can do this right now. Take a moment and just ask yourself the following questions. What problem do I see consistently showing up in my life on an ongoing basis over and over and over? Then ask yourself this question about that. What truth have I been avoiding? Because remember, I'm responsible. I've got to ask myself that. What truth have I been ignoring? Then I got to look, because we know success and failure leaves clues. What clues have I ignored? Then I got to ask myself this real powerful question right here. It'll change your life. Maybe it is me. Maybe it is me. Listen, I always talk about elite performers because that's what we do at Mental Performance Mastery. We help people perform their best, be elite performers when it counts the most. Elite performers are not those people who never fail or who never come up short. Elite people are those who have the courage, the intestinal fortitude, the internal fortitude to examine themselves honestly and change what needs to be changed. Elite performers know this right here. They know this beyond a shadow of a doubt. If I accept responsibility, I can examine myself and I can change. I have the ability to respond properly. Listen, as I wrap this up, you cannot improve your life if you refuse to examine your life and see where I just might be the problem is. I hope this has helped you on today, because maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I am. And if I am, I have the ability to respond properly. Listen, it's been great talking to you on today. I hope you will take this and do a couple things with it. Number one, go back and listen to it again. Number two, share it with somebody on your social media or wherever, or just tune somebody in to the Mental Performance Mastery site and let them grow and develop just like you are. But remember this right here. Maybe it is me. Maybe I am the one. And you know what? When I get to that point, congratulations, because I'm moving higher. Listen, I got to get out of here. I'm going to have some more great stuff for you on next week. You remember that. And check us out all week long as we post great and wonderful things that will help you. But remember this right here. My name is Coach David. I appreciate you. I love you. And I want to encourage you. But remember this most of all. You're the architect of your life. You are. But guess what? I believe in you. And I will see you on next week. If you need my help, give me a shout. I'll talk to you then. Bye.